and welcome to episode 2 of the Addicted to Cars podcast. My name is Scott Newman. With me is Stephen Ottley. Combined, we have almost 40 years of automotive journalist experience, which is quite amazing given we're still both 28.
Yeah.
How are you, Steve?
Well, shocked at that number, but all right, let's go.
Scary, isn't it? I thought about that the other day.
Yeah.
You've got more than me, so you're doing the heavy lifting there.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel old, mate. I'm starting to feel old. Thank you.
That's
Appreciate
all right.
that. Appreciate
You're only
that,
as
mate.
old as you feel. Welcome to episode 2. Today we'll be going through some news, some reviews, some classifieds. We've got some buying advice for you, and then we're going to talk motorsport. We're going to talk about the new GT3 Cabriolet, the new C-Class, some cars we've been driving, the best driving EVs you should buy in this fuel crisis era, and then we're going to talk about F1 2026, good or bad. It's going to be a debate. So why don't we get stuck into some news? And I just missed it last week, but the new GT3 Cabriolet called the GT3 SC. What do you think, Steve?
Look,
That's not a positive noise.
I love I love a 911 GT3 as much as the next man, but or woman. But I've never understood convertible high performance cars, because if you're really buying for the performance, surely you want not to sound too technical, but surely you want the torsional rigidity. You want something that's going to be solid and that's to make it the most dynamic thing you can possibly make it. I don't fully understand the point of having, it is supposed to be sort of the ultimate driver's car and the car you take to the track. I guess technically open wheelers don't have lids, but it just seems like an odd choice to me. It seems like the classic case of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Look, it's an interesting one in that I think as a like I said, as a driving enthusiast, as a car enthusiast, the initial reaction is shock and horror. And I think 10 years ago, maybe they would have been destroyed for this. Okay. When the GT3 was still, 10 years ago, it just had PDK, but not long ago, it was, it had to be manual, it had to be pure, it had to be lightweight, had to be stiff. The interesting is we've had a couple of these. The Speedster, right? Is it any different to a 911 Speedster?
I think the Speedster for me is like, it's kind of something special. Again, GT3 is it used to mean something, man, and now it doesn't. Take it. Oh, that's the thing. I like the PDK because and that's the thing. The PDK, they put it in. Their argument is it's faster, right?
It is an erosion of brand values.
Yeah, and look, here's the other thing. It's not like you were short a choice if you wanted a convertible Porsche 911 that was you could pick regular fast, extra spicy fast. They've got a variety of cabriolets already. It's not like you needed to go. It's not like, man, I wish I could get a 911 convertible, but one that was really fast. It's like they have a turbo. There's a reason for that. And I got no issue with 911 turbo cabriolet. That's sort of, that's part of that brand. Like you say though, but GT3, put it this way, it's okay. But if they start rolling out like the Porsche Cayenne GT3, we're gonna have real problems.
Yeah, again, my initial reaction was, I'm not super interested. Like, typically the first thing I do when a GT product comes out is I'll go and look at one of the videos from Haggerty or Evo or something with the interview with Andreas Poininger, because I want to know all about it. And I haven't done it with this car. I think I will, because I was like, I didn't really have any strong issue against it, especially as they've made it because customers were asking for it. And at that point, it's kind of like their job is to sell cars. So if you've got a bunch of customers, and I actually understand it, because if you had all these 911 Speedster customers going, we really like this car, but the roof is a pain in the bum, which frankly it is, that stupid bloody manual roof.
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of get where people were coming from.
But don't you think that's... Yeah, but don't you think that kind of then dilutes it though, right? The whole premise is they introduce these limited edition things like the Speedster, the was it GT3 Touring effectively? Like, it's become the GT3 Touring package.
The 911R. Yeah.
911R. Yeah. There's too many 911s. You know, and that was special, right? They were special, and they were limited, and there was this like, you know, and that's the thing. It sort of switched from, hey, this is a limited edition, like special that you're going to be like in an exclusive club with, to hey, you're actually a pilot group, and we basically used you as like customer research, and now we figured out we can actually sell tons of these. So now we're going to. It's like, well, hold on, now is my thing still special because I now can effectively get the same thing, for less money and in bulk. You know, like it sort of cheapens the whole thing.
Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, the existence of the GT3 Touring hasn't hurt 911R values, but you know, I certainly take your point.
Yeah.
I mean, we are dancing around the fact a little bit of why this car exists. This car exists because Porsche's in a whole heap of financial trouble.
Yeah.
Thanks to its massive EV. So basically, I think, this is just my personal opinion, I think if you can think of a 911 variant, as wacky as it might be, I think we'll probably see it over the next 18 to 24 months because it has to lean on the 911 so hard until it can get a ICE, Boxster and Cayman out. It'll be interesting to see whether this latest EV surge actually helps them because they've made such a big investment. People, you know, Cayenne EV, Macan EV might actually pick up, but regardless, they've still got a big hole in their lineup in terms of sports cars, so they have to lean on. Because that's the other thing. This GT3 S3 is $600,000 before options and on roads, and it's not a limited edition model.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've got. It sounds harsh, but it is going to have to be the cash cow. So Dakar convertible, GT3 convertible.
I'd love it. I'd love it. Look, yeah, like I say, I don't love the idea, or you know, I certainly wouldn't love the idea of if you're a 911R customer, a Speedster customer, or a Dakar customer, and then they bring it out. But part of me, I would love if they did do a permanent Dakar, like or something similar, because that was awesome. And that's the thing. Look, for all this sort of you know, how could you Porsche? The thing that's really impressive about this current generation of 911 variants is that they all they've just sort of increased the bandwidth. You know, everything is kind of just that little bit more focused, or a little bit more very, you know, particular about what it is. You know, like the turbo is outrageously fast. The GTS is now a bit quicker to separate it from the Carrera S, and so you just have these, like, you know, the Dakar was actually genuinely a bit of fun off road. GT3 is a more extreme version of itself, and then GT3 RS is really like almost more biased towards the track than it is the road. You know, they've just pushed the bandwidth of 911, you know, just further and further, you know, broader to have it, give it more appeal. And so like you say, they are in trouble financially, and so look, if more 911 variants, which is never too much of a bad thing, you know, if more 911 variants is the answer, then sure, we'll have to suck it up. Not that either of us have spare $600,000 to buy.
No, but it'll be interesting to see what they come up with next. So to switch to something very different to a convertible GT3, the new C-Class kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't really expect this.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, C-Class EV.
Yeah, C-Class EV. But it seems to be the C-Class. Like all the literature just says it says new electric C-Class, but sportiest C-Class ever. Anyway, you know, everybody's talking about one thing.
Just to be clear, we are going to warn people if we put a photo of this on our YouTube.
Well, that's a good segue. Its looks are challenging.
Polarizing?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm always wary of talking about design, right? I know nothing about design. I've never studied design, never studied art. I get that sometimes you have to push design and take chances with it in order to, you know, set a new trend. And, you know, again, E65 series, it came out. Everyone thought it was awful. Now I think it's a fantastic looking car. Really, 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 really good. Yeah. But there's a lot going on with this car. So run us through your reactions when you first saw it.
Yeah, look, I remember once a car that shall remain nameless. We sat in a presentation with a design expert who told us good design didn't need to be explained. And then the car company spent a good 30 minutes explaining the design. which is probably all you needed to know about the design quality of that particular car. You're right, it is subjective, but the reality is customers are going to decide. And personally, I think it is a little confronting. Like, it is not Mercedes-Benz finest work. I think it is, frankly, it just looks odd to me. I really don't sort of get what they were going for. Like, I mean, frankly, I just think it's ugly. I think, sometimes you get cars like that where you just go, right from day one. Yeah, sometimes there are cars that grow on you. I remember the Kia Sportage when they put the Tiger Shark Grill or whatever it was, and that was a bit controversial. But then, 5 years into its life cycle, you're like, halfway through its life cycle, probably you're like, oh, okay, that actually looks all right. Like, that looks better. Like, that actually sort of fits the traffic around it. But then you get cars like the AU Falcon, which, while it has attained, cult status now, it's really, I think it's probably fair to say it's somewhat of an ironic cult status, and certainly beloved by people that didn't have to buy them in the day, So, yeah, design is subjective, but, like, it's also sometimes things could just be bad.
Yeah, that's right. We got eyes. I mean, for me, one of the strangest things is I get forward thinking, progressive design, but for Mercedes-Benz, like for an electric C-Class, I would have, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I would have thought the Mercedes buyer tends to be relatively conservative, quite mature, so to then go with this, and I actually think the overall silhouette of the thing isn't too bad, right? It's kind of got this coupe, rakish thing going on, a bit like an Audi S5. So
I don't love the back end though either.
But all the detailing is so weird. Like the rear end, they've taken this light bar from like that GT3 concept thing that looks like it's staring at you. It's got like 4 different layers. The grille at the front looks like Jaws.
The grille is what really gets me. I'm just not 100% sure what they were going for. Like, to me.
But do you like the i3? Do you think the i3 is better looking in this car? To me, I think the i3 looks much better.
Oh, the new 3 Series, yeah. I mean, I think, look, I don't love it, but I think it also is quintessentially a BMW. I think I don't fully, like, it almost, to me, almost looks like a facelift, like, rather than an all-new car. Like, there's elements of the old car, like, around that nose. Like, so it's like this, like, we're going to do evolutionary on the corners, but then in the middle, we'll just, like, it'll be a complete change. It's, like, just odd. And the other thing, from a design perspective, is I thought we were moving away from electric cars have to be, I'm electric, they had to really shout, I'm electric, and moving back towards a more conventional vehicle. If you look at the electric cars that are selling, they're more and more becoming just a conventional, practical car rather than just screaming.
Mercedes learn this lesson with EQ? Like,
I would have thought, but apparently not.
If they had just made an electric S-Class, they would have probably sold heaps of them. Whereas, and again, another car we won't touch on too much today, but the new 7 Series came out, and I think looks great. Kind of sort of sleek and elegant. The other weird thing about Mercedes is they have got this fascination at the moment with putting their logo everywhere, like the three pronged star. Yeah. It's in all the tail lights. It's in both the headlights. It's massive on the grille. It's like, just slow it down, guys.
It's like, we get it. It's a Mercedes. But I think, mean, look, maybe, it's becoming, you're getting more pressure. You've got to really ram home the message that it's a Mercedes. But I don't know. And the other thing we haven't touched on yet is the interior. I forgot it. I'd put it from my mind. Why? I mean, so we should stress that it is, of course, it's an optional screen, which is why it's in all the imagery that they've released of the car. But that optional 39-inch, that's nearly a meter. That's 99 centimeters. To be fair, it is smaller than the 55-inch screen that's in the EQS SUV, which I have driven. And frankly, like, I don't get it. I just think it's like, I've actually written a piece for Cars Guide on this. Like, this obsession with screens doesn't help anyone. Like, it's a, okay. Some, like, Tesla kind of cracked this nut where it's like, hold on a second. All these buttons and switches cost heaps. Like, if we just put a screen in the middle here, we can just do everything, and then we can just update the software and all that sort of stuff. And in theory, it's all well and good. But the reality is it's a cost saver. And it doesn't make cars particularly user friendly, because instead of just rotating a dial or pressing a button, you've now got to scroll through a menu that there's no haptic feedback, and then apparently we've got into a measuring contest of like who's got the biggest screen, and it just, to me, I don't get it. It doesn't look classy. It looks like
No.
if you're a brand like Mercedes, particularly a brand like Mercedes, but BMW's done a little bit with the new 3 Series with that. They've got the strip. Yeah, it's a smaller screen, but it does.
Haven't obviously interacted with that yet, but it seems a lot less in your face.
Yeah, just the Mercedes one just looks like, not to be unkind, but it looks like it could just be from anyone. Like it looks like any new brand, like any new Chinese brand or any car maker that decided, we're just going to make they have a luxury car brand now. Look, we're going to put a giant screen in it. It's like, that's not luxury. Where's the like premium design and the touch points and all that sort of stuff? It's just I don't know. I just don't get it.
And what's a shame is, it might be, and it probably will be, a beautiful car to drive.
Probably, yeah.
Quick. Mercedes has taken big steps on EV, tech and battery range. I mean, what will hurt it against the i3, I think, is that it's 140 k's down on range. I mean, it's got plenty, right? 750 k's range, it's plenty. You're well down on your main rival. So it'll be a very interesting twin test, I think.
And look, obviously keen to see those things in the real world and see them in the metal. That's the one thing, is neither of us have actually seen these cars in the metal. So
very true.
Very
true. So we'll reserve judgment, but
having just slammed them
that's right.
for 5 minutes. Right. But whatever. We'll see them when they come here. But certainly the early signs are not great.
All right, let's move on to reviews. What's a car that you've driven recently that has impressed one way or the other?
Yeah, so the car I actually just recently got out of, the Volvo ES90. It's the first Volvo I'd actually driven in years. I hadn't driven a Volvo in a long time. And to be honest, I was super impressed. Like, really, like, it's a slightly strange car in the sense.
Tell the people what it is.
So the ES90 is, it's kind of a sedan. It's kind of a liftback. Sort of hinting at SUV. If anything, it's like a modern Swedish version of a BMW 5 Series GT, as strange as that sounds. It's it's a raised up sedan, but it does have a lift back boot, so it's not technically speaking a 3-box sedan. But yeah, it's their large luxury car. Sort of probably size-wise, it's probably in between 5 Series and 7 Series, E-Class, S-Class, kind of. It's big, but what I love about it, I've always sort of liked this about Volvos, is it's uniquely Scandinavian. I mean, particularly now Saab no longer exists, and don't really drive a lot of Koenigseggs. It just feels, it feels very, feels very Nordic. It's got, they love to use a light coloured wood inside, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's the difference between looking at something like a C-Class and going, look how big this screen is. Like ES90, big screen. A lot of technology. It's got an amazing sound system. Bowers & Wilkins, awesome sound system. But it's got all the screens. It's got 2 screens. It's got enough screens, but it's got amazing design, materials. All the touch points and just the different the different trims. How the blend of getting all that stuff right, to me, is what makes a luxury car stand out. Right, like it's what makes it feel premium, and so it's all electric.
Luxury is a feeling; it's not gadgets.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, anyone can make a big TV, right? Like this is a big screen. It's like you can go and buy a brand new Sony or whatever 70-inch television. You can also go buy a TCL Hisense 70-inch television. Like. That doesn't make it special. It is, so it's all electric. It's single motor, so that it's the sister car to the EX90, which is the SUV, that is available dual motors, but the ES90 for now is only a single rear-mounted motor. It's not super quick, but it's for a big car, it's sprightly. But the thing that really, really stuck out to me, and this probably is unsurprising given the brand, but the safety is really impressive. We've moved to this era now where everyone's got basically the same safety. And it's kind of, you think, well, how's Volvo going to stand out now? Because everyone's got, active, cruise control, autonomous braking, lane keeping, blah, blah, blah. Well, how Volvo do it better is they do a better job of it, right? It's
Yeah.
better integrated into the car, like to the point where I never thought about switching any of the systems off. There's certain, as well as
That's
I do. There's
impressive.
certain cars you hop into, and the first thing you do is switch off this safety system and that safety system because they're going to beep and bong at you non-stop. This thing didn't even think about changing it. There was a
That's impressive.
yeah, there was I actually got to the point where I, like, towards the end of the week driving the thing, I'm like, I wonder if these safety systems actually work properly. Like this is
So
not
then you
going
crashed
off at
it.
all. Yeah, so I just crashed into a wall. No, actually, I
But it didn't let you.
no, I was actually filming with it, doing a bit of tracking, and the camera car in front slowed down quickly, and told me, hey, stop. And I'm like, wow, like it genuinely is just better. And I think that again is one of those things that's going to separate luxury brands from mainstream in this not of next few years, is how well you integrate that safety technology into the car to get it to make it seamless.
How much is it?
It's what is it? It's like 100 and I forgot to look at the price because it wasn't.
But it's lots.
It's 110.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not cheap, but it's it's a luxury car. Like I say, you're looking at something instead of a BMW or a Mercedes or
Yeah.
So
It sounds like one of those cars that more people should buy and probably won't, but they should because it's great.
Yeah. Look at a Volvo.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, what have you been driving, man?
Well, I'm going to go the opposite end of the spectrum, and not $1 million this week. I have had. We've spoken about this car lots before.
You didn't drive any Lamborghinis or Koenigsegg's, Aston Martin, Valhallas? Okay, all right.
I actually drove something
Slumming
even
it.
better. The i20N. I had 2 weeks in an i20N, and we've spoken about how good this car is before, so I'm not going to bang on about it too much. But
Yeah.
brilliant. And like I said, I've driven some fantastic cars recently, okay? Some really exotic, high-end stuff. Very lucky. I don't take it for granted. But it reminded me that in terms of experience, they're not necessarily any better than a really, really well put together lower-end car. Like, I took this thing for a really long drive, drove the wheels off it, and I didn't have to worry about tyre wear. I didn't use $300 in fuel. It was smaller, so I could drive it, more. I could get more out of it. Production has finished on that car now. It's not with us for much longer. Apparently, there is going to be a new one, but I think it's a future modern classic because it's just a fantastic car. It is so much fun.
Yeah.
So it's brilliantly judged. So well done, Hyundai, on that car.
Yeah, I think it's one of those cars where, like, obviously because the i30N is so great, and I think I agree with so love that car. But when the i20 came out, you're like, well, it's only got 1.6, and is it really as good? And then you start driving, you're like, yeah, this is fantastic. When you drive it in isolation, when you're obviously not comparing it to a bigger, more powerful sibling, in isolation, it's brilliant. That size of hot hatch is so underrated, and it's sadly, an endangered species, really, right? Like, it's so hard to find. Fiesta ST was a fantastic car. Polo GTI is still around, I think, but like, they used to be affordable. Like, that was the cool thing, is they used to be like sub 30.
Well, that's why I did a video on it with it and said, like, it's, unless I've missed something, which I don't think I have, it is the only sort of performance car now on sale in Australia under 40 grand.
Which is
DR86, MX5, Polo GDI, Suzuki Swift Sport's gone, Fiesta ST's gone. And the new one, being probably hybrid, when it comes, will be more expensive again. So it's, I sort of said, it's the end of an era. Like, it's the last truly affordable performance car we've got. So, very sad, but... Yeah.
Which is also strange. I mean... I get it. I get, inflation. Everything is getting more expensive. That's the nature of the beast. I think, and you've talked about this in the past, that sometimes when we say things are more expensive than they used to be, they're not really when you actually adjust for, inflation over time. But yeah, I think, for the average person probably under 40 who wants to drive, looking for that performance car, you can't buy a new one. You have to look at the used market and...
Which are more expensive because there's no new ones.
Yeah, so it becomes challenging. But anyway, there you go. There's a neat segue to look at classifieds.
It is a neat segue into the classifieds, and I get that there will be an element of our listenership that doesn't want to have anything to do with EVs. But in this fuel crisis times, we quite like EVs. Again, I don't really want an EV sports car per se, but there can be some EVs out there that are fun to drive. So I thought we'd talk about them today, and we're going to do, again, our top 5 in a little draft section of, I guess, EVs or FEVs that can relieve the pressure on your wallet by being EV most of the time, but still give you a driving thrill when you want it to be, while still having a 911 or an MX-5 or a whatever in the garage for when you really want to go and have a proper drive. So this week I'm going to go...
You kick us off, because I'll kick us off last week.
But before we do that, did you find this hard?
Yeah. I did. Behind the curtains here, dear listeners / viewers, I did check this. I'm like, are we sure we're doing just used? Because it's hard. Like, because it's only really in the last sort of 18 months that there's some really, some more fun stuff has arrived, I think. So, certainly times are changing, but it's certainly challenging to find cars that meet the criteria.
If you want a fun to drive EV, I still think the best one out there actually is the Hyundai Ioniq 5N.
Yeah, you bastard. That was my first choice.
And a lot of money, but I found one. There's one currently on car sales at the moment. Not sponsored. They should sponsor us. But it's got 500 Ks on the clock at a dealer. It's a dealer demo, and it is $87,000. So you can.
I think I looked at the same one.
Yeah. So there's a nice $25,000 saving or so, or $20,000 saving straight up. And it also means that would be under LCT, so you could novated lease it if you want it and make it even cheaper.
Yeah.
So this might be a bit of a theme to this to this list, that you can get some bargains out there. So while a $110,000 Ioniq 5N might be a bit of a struggle, if you look around, you can find some bargains. And with that car, I'll keep it very simple, right? On a twisty road, engine mode activated, gearbox mode activated, it's as close to an R35 GTR as I've ever driven in terms of its speed. And still quite a big car, but unbelievable grip, power, traction, awesome thing.
Yeah. Like I say, I would have picked that first too. It's funny, like we've sort of talked about in the past, you and I, like this idea of like dream garages and things like that. I think if I had to have like a one-car garage, this would very much be something I would consider, right? Because it kind of ticks all the boxes, and and I think that's one of the underrated elements of an electric performance car, is you can drive it, like you can get an AMG or an M car or something, and they have a comfort mode, but they are still fundamentally tuned. I mean, the AMG A45 is a classic example where it always feels like it's just chomping at the bit to go hard. Like it just doesn't want to do the commute, right? It just wants to unleash all of its power. Whereas an EV, well, you put in comfort mode and it just drives silently and efficiently and all that sort of stuff, right? You're not just it is just as efficient as it can be. And so, but then when you want to, you can hit the end button and you've got this like ferocious performance car. And it's funny you say it like the R35, comparing it to R35, because I think it is sort of the Hyundai GTR moment, right? It's when they went from mainstream brand to offering a genuine kind of like supercar levels of performance. That's the thing; it's got over 400 kilowatts of power. Like, I think, which
then woke up the establishment, because suddenly BMW M and Porsche looked at this thing and went, maybe we should do that.
Yeah. And the fake gearbox, it's fake. And guess what? You don't have to turn it on if you don't want to. If you think it's a crap idea and you hate it, don't do it. If you don't like the fake noise, don't do it. But if you like those things, I think it does a cool, it does a good job of them. I think it's fun.
All right, so now I've stolen your thunder. What are you going to go with?
Yeah. I mean, look, is it a car I would take on a track day? No. But if I was looking for something to go for a long, weekend drive and enjoy myself, Audi e-tron GT.
Oh, you took mine.
Yeah, see? One. Take that, you bastard. I think it's... look, it's easy to say Porsche Taycan, but they are. I mean, not that they are related at all in any way, shape, or form, as the two
Of course
companies
not.
would like to tell us. But
But the Audi
yeah,
has the depreciation trump
yes,
card.
yes. Looking at the classifieds, you can get them now for a significant discount off retail, shall we say? So,
Well,
look,
say that. I've been watching these for quite a while. And what's interesting is that not long ago, there were a lot of, I
yeah,
think there were like 40 dealer demos
yeah,
around Australia with next to no Ks on them for like 100 grand off, and they're all disappeared. So either everyone's bought them, or I don't know, head office. Maybe I'm being a conspiracy theorist, but yeah, there were a lot of cars, and maybe they all just got snapped up in this current surge or something like that.
yeah,
Because you could get a car with like 1,500 Ks on it for literally like $120,000 off new. Um,
yeah.
Whereas they tend to be all gone now. But there are a couple of private sales, which I'm stealing your thunder, but yeah,
No,
like
no. I mean,
low hundreds
yeah,
for 30,000 Ks on it, effectively a brand new car,
yeah,
and changes the game, doesn't it? Changes how you
yeah.
look at it.
And that's the thing. I actually think probably worth noting is when we look at these as classifieds, I was trying to look at. Originally, I sort of set it as genuine used and try to and pushed out the dealer demos. But then you include those in. There's just a lot, right? There's all these electric cars. There's a lot of dealer demos that are, yeah, just floating around because in a lot of instances it's for whatever reason, either it's an older stock or they've registered it to meet a sales quota or whatever it is. There's a lot of them around, so it pays to shop around.
Yes.
What have you got? What's your next choice?
Given you stole that, and I didn't think you were going to,
You underestimated me.
I'm going to go perhaps an underrated one for the. We've talked about a couple of expensive cars, but MG4. Remember the first time I drove an MG4, I was like,
Are we saying MG4 or MG4 X Power?
not the X Power.
Not the X
Like
Power.
many
Okay.
EVs, I think that sometimes they jump the shark by trying to be too sporty. The X Power with its dual motor, the rest of the chassis can't handle it. I've driven that car quite a lot. Whereas the first time I drove just a regular MG4 64, I was like, what's going on? Like, where's this been?
Yeah.
It's
Because it's rear-mounted motor, so it's a rear-wheel
rear-mounted
drive.
motor, but just like clear, accurate steering, really nice handling, great balance, pretty grippy. And again, I found an MG4. I'll put these up for those viewers. I found an MG4 Excite 64. So basic, but got the slightly bigger battery, 400 Ks of range for 30 grand. And
Yep.
again, it had 8,000 Ks on it. So it's a brand new car, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't driven them, but compared to those smaller cars that like a BYD Atto 1 or a BYD Dolphin or
Well,
something like that.
I've just driven the new MG4 Urban, which same name, totally different car, right? Different platform. It's now a front-mounted motor, front-wheel drive, and it is a conventional hatchback, right? It's perfectly fine. If you just want a conventional hatchback, if you're looking at just a regular hatch, it's great, right? It's cheaper than a Corolla hybrid, and it's all electric, but it's nowhere near as fun to drive as the original MG4.
I mean, and again, like I've had an MG4, even just the base one, the Excite 51 or whatever, and it's not a car you're going to take necessarily even to, on a road trip to the twisties, but
No.
for cruising around the town, you've got instant acceleration, you've got a car that really handles it. To me, it's like the Golf thing, right? Like there's nothing necessarily sporty about a base Golf, but it's just a beautiful car to drive. The ride, the handling, the communication of it. Really good car, and really cheap, up to 10-year warranty. So people, I think, sniff at it, and I tell everyone, like, it's a beautiful car to drive. They're cheap, if that's what you want.
Right.
They're spacious. Yeah, they're good.
I'm just going to put this out there. I only should talk to MG. Let's buy a second-hand MG4, make and mod it. Let's make it a project car.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
All right, put that on the to-do list.
Sounds good. All right, what do you got?
Okay, now we did say EVs and PHEVs. So
We did.
I have, and we originally were looking at what's used in the vintage sense. not a dealer demo. BMW i8 is my
great.
suggestion.
Great call. I didn't even think of those.
Yeah, I mean,
I was thinking M5 if someone was going to go off Fev,
Yeah.
but no.
it's older. Yeah, I haven't driven the new M5, so I can't really pass judgment on it. But yeah, i8. I did like the i3. It was a fun little car to drive too. Those original electric BMWs were so interesting. Like they had like, again, bringing this episode full circle. Fantastic design. That was they were the first sort of BMWs where BMW designers were like not required to just take the 7 Series and reduce 10% to make a 5 Series and then photocopy it and reduce 10% to make the 3 Series. It was a very structured design. Whereas i3 was great. i8. I mean, I think to this day, I don't know how many cars I've driven in my career. I mean, I imagine it'd be well over. Yeah, I reckon it'd be well over 1,000. I mean, multiple thousand. I reckon probably. But I don't think I've had a car that has attracted more attention, more looks, more photos. Like it looks $1 million. You can pick them up for under $100,000. Is it the fastest, most dynamic BMW they've ever made? No. But is it fun to drive? Yes.
Is it one of the best cars BMW to drive? It is. I mean, compared to... I guess I drove it quite a lot in period, as you probably did as well. I drove it a couple of times.
I drove it. I only drove it once.
But I actually drove one quite recently, this year.
Oh, really?
Briefly. And, 10 years on, you're like, oh, do I just have rose-tinted glasses?
Yeah.
Nah. It's awesome.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, my memory was starting to get a bit foggy on it, but I don't remember it blowing me away. Like, you wouldn't say... What I would say is, does it drive as good as the... Well, yeah, it was Gallardo was the period Lamborghini. Was Gallardo or Huracan was brand new?
Oh, probably that. Switch over to Huracan. Yeah.
Was it as dynamically capable as that? No. Would you, would you attract as many looks? Yeah, you get more looks in the BMW, right? Particularly depending on the spec. If you've got the darker colours.
What did blow me away on the what did blow me away about the i8 at the time was it was that era of M car when they were getting complex. So kind of they could be challenging to drive, huge horsepower, turbocharged, and they didn't have. The steering was a bit iffy. Still great cars, but they didn't necessarily have that pure. Whereas you got in the i8, and it felt retro in a sense in that it didn't have, even though it was the futuristic one, didn't have a lot of modes. Had a sport button. That was kind of it.
Didn't have massive rubber either.
Had small tires.
Yeah. Like it was
so
kind
to actually drive and flow across. Again, you wouldn't take it on a track day, but to sort of as a road car. Beautiful car to drive and just sort of flow and nice light steering. I'm totally with you. I forgot about that car. I didn't consider it, but that's a great. And again, like you say, $100,000 buys you a good one. And show stopping.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. What is it now? Like it'd be 15 plus years old, and it's when did it come out?
2014, I think they came out.
Yeah, so
2014, 15. So 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years old. Doesn't look it.
No.
If BMW rolled that into a showroom today, you'd be like, "Wow, okay, cool." Like, I mean, even the grille is kind of like the kidney grille is sort of it's a little bit squashed. It's sort of not, too different from what they're offering today on stuff like 5 Series. So, I mean, I underrated.
The only issue is that once you see that it's pooping out a 911, you can't unsee it.
No one needed to know that.
No.
All right, what have you got? Now. Finish us off strong, mate. Bring us home.
Well, given I thought I was quite clever with all my picks, but they're all gone now. These are too much money, but they're too much money new, and they're still too much money second hand. But I think if you haggled or went in with an offer, you'd get one for a significant discount. And that's the Ford Mustang Mach-E.
Yeah. I did have that on my short list. Yeah.
Much maligned car because it's called a Mustang, and no one wants it to be called a Mustang. Blah 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 blah. But I had one for quite a long time last year. I spent quite a lot of time in it. Initially, when I drove it, I didn't like it. It was a car of the year thing. You're in and out of cars all the time.
Yeah.
It was a very brief thing. I was like, I don't really get it. It's kind of weird. Over time, I really came to appreciate it. And the big thing about that car is, I think it's, especially in this current thing, if there's a Ford owner out there, right, that's considering an EV, it is the perfect Ford EV, right? Because it drives really, really well. It feels like a Ford. It's got all the Ford bits in it, the screen and the software and
Yeah.
everything like that. Yet it's an EV, but it's a really spacious car. They are too much money new.
Yes.
When I had it, I had the base model, and they were doing the 59,990 drive away, and that kind of felt like the rightish sort of price for that car. Sadly, that the cheapest one for sale was like 50 grand drive away, which seems, or 50 grand before on roads,
Yeah.
which feels too much. But equally, I suspect if you went in with a decent offer, you'd probably get one.
Yeah, I think they'd be. Yeah, I think they'd be motivated sellers. Would probably be the
Yeah.
polite way of
So
saying it. Yeah.
again, yeah, it's actually a really genuinely fun rear-wheel drive car to drive. Even just the base one, still plenty quick, practical. I really like that car.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Ford website now. I mean, literally, yeah, like 89k drive away for the GT. But even that, yeah, that 60k drive away select, it's MY23. Like it's
That says it all. In that we still have 3-year-old cars we can sell you.
yeah, like that's the I mean that's a red flag. And like I say, I feel like that might suggest that you probably can maybe scooch under 60k
Well,
drive
just
away.
to
But yeah, I
we'll
mean,
do some consumer advice here because I'll leave the brand. Oh no, I won't. I'll put the brand in. Sorry, Kia. So someone wanted to go and buy a Kia EV6. So this is a friend of mine, right? His neighbour just bought a Kia EV6 GT.
yeah,
Matte grey paint. Good looking car, actually, I think, with the matte grey paint and the green calipers and stuff like that.
yeah,
Obviously fast, but a bit of a weird one. I was like, well, that's a sort of strange car to buy. 100 grand before on roads. And the guy was interested in it and said, just go on and make him an offer. Go on and basically make him an offensive offer. He got it for 55 grand.
I did not think you were going to say a number starting with 5. Jeepers. Yeah,
I think it was a dealer demo, but
this is the thing though, right? And this is the thing with electric cars, electric performance cars, and stuff like. Yeah, if you're looking to go electric and you're willing, I mean, I don't think there's anything dramatically different between a MY23 Mach-E. Like it's not gonna be night and day
No.
between an MY23 and if you get a brand new one per se. But like,
No.
If you're looking to get an electric car and you want something, like I say, again, it would be great if they just called it the Mach-E and didn't call it a Mustang.
Well, that Ioniq 5N we were talking about, that was an MY24 plate, I think.
Yeah.
So again, it's a car that's been.
Yeah.
And I get it. The dealer.
They're not
shocking,
popular,
but
and so
that car,
yeah.
the dealer's been looking at that car for 2 years, and it's like, I just need it gone. Okay,
Yeah, it's just
if it
burning a
costs
hole
me
in your
50
pocket.
grand, I just need it gone. So.
Yeah.
Again, the manufacturers might not thank us for that, but maybe they will because they will get rid of their stock. But yeah,
At some point you got to
bargains
sell
had.
it, right? There's no point. Yeah, there's no point holding on to a car indefinitely trying to get. It's only going to get older.
Yeah.
Right. Like these cars are. The longer they sit on the lot, they don't get more expensive. So yeah, it's electric. Plug-in hybrid performance. Drivers' cars, shall we say, are not exactly. I think a huge segment of the market, and that's why it's probably a segment of the market where you can get a bargain if you shop around.
Yep.
So there you go.
All right. Speaking of plug-in hybrids, we'd like to do a segue. Let's talk Formula One 2026. So, it's garnered a few headlines. F1's new rules.
1 or 2.
We've had a couple of conversations about it, so we thought we might as well turn the mics on.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this. I don't think... So basically we're going to be devil and angel, good and bad, etc., etc. And I'm going to represent good. I don't think everything about the new rules are good, right? But I'm generally positive about them. Again, for Steve, I'm not sorry for speaking for you, but you don't think everything about him is bad. But I think it's also fair to say that you are generally negative about the new rules.
Yeah.
So do you want to open the floor and present the case of why F1 has gone the wrong direction and why you don't like the current set of regulations?
Well, I mean, I think for most people if they're F1 fans, I mean, the biggest issue is they are overly complicated, right? They have become incredibly complex cars. They have taken this this hybrid, equal energy from the internal combustion engine and equal energy from the electric motor, the battery, incredibly seriously. And I understand why they did it. When these rules came out, they had Ferrari and Mercedes committed to building engines, and pretty much no one else. Renault Alpine was on the verge of, meh. Honda was going to pull out. Cadillac was not interested. So, I understand why they did it. But what gets me is Max Verstappen sat in a press conference in 2023 and said, the problem with these rules are we're going to run out of energy and we're going to have to lift and coast, and now we've got this marvelous invention called super clipping, which is, I don't know, it's like saying it's a super storm. Like, it's not a good thing. It's not super. It's not a positive, right? It is absolutely, like, watching these onboards what I guess the best way to put it is, I tried to explain this to someone. Look, I get it. There's lots more overtaking. It's really exciting. The cars are swapping backwards and forwards, right? Most of the time, though, there has been some good racing. I will concede, like China, the stuff between the Ferraris was interesting, and there are some positives I'm sure you'll touch on. But the notion that, there was one in China where Max Verstappen went around the outside of two cars and the commentators are all excited, and it's like, yeah, but he's got another 300 kilowatts of power. Of course I'll give you the hot tip, right? If we drive down a straight piece of road, me and Max Verstappen in the same car, and my car has 300 kilowatts more power than his car, I'm going to overtake him. But I'm not doing that because I'm a better driver. I don't think I'm. Look, have I ever raced against Max? No. So we can't say definitively, but I would, based on the current evidence, I'm happy to admit that he's probably better than me, and I shouldn't be overtaking him, but I would blast past him if I had double the amount of power or whatever it is. That is not racing, and having to lift off. There was another incident in China where Charles Leclerc, drove faster through a corner, had a little bit of a surge of power, and then the engine manager, the computers, managing all this technology, has then denied him power later in the lap. So because he's driven faster, he's actually lapped slower. He's been penalised for it. That fundamentally is not Formula One. I get the technology. Formula One has always been a technology-driven sport. It's always been at the pinnacle of technology. So I actually have no issue with the cars being hybrid and that sort of stuff. But not these hybrids. These are a miss. These are a very, very clear miss. And
so
I think
would you, you can't just go V, it's not possible, right?
No, I'm not one of those people that's like, bring back the V10s.
What would you do? Yeah, what would you do? Realistically, what would you do?
Look, obviously they're making some changes for Miami. They're
I think that'll help a lot in terms of energy preservation.
Look, the other thing we've got to factor in, there's two things I would say you've got to factor in is, one, we haven't been at great tracks for the energy harvesting. So, Albert Park doesn't have a lot of big braking zones. Suzuka doesn't have a lot of huge braking zones. China, you got that long back straight that you're burning a lot of energy. So they haven't been great. Although, ironically, you're probably arguing that you should go to old school, smaller tracks would actually suit these cars better. But, look, we're only 3 races in. We've got to see more. Got to see a bit more evidence, and hopefully these changes do improve it. But I don't want to see any more super clipping. I just think that is the dumbest thing I've ever... It's got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in Formula One. It is just so ridiculous.
Ironically, the super clipping is now more powerful, but that's good. It's a good thing because it'll happen less, because it'll feed a lot more juice back into the battery.
Yeah. The second thing to remember... and I get, again, you're trying to make the case for the positive. And there has been, like I say, there's been some good racing between, like I say, the Ferraris and that sort of thing. But we've also seen stuff like Max in Japan just sit behind Gasly because he's like, well, there's no point because I'll overtake him and then he'll just overtake me. And then, it's just a waste of time. But this is as good as it gets, right? Because they haven't figured it all out yet. These are the first 3 races with brand new rules. Australia was interesting.
Yeah,
the first few laps of Australia were really interesting because they didn't know what to do. They hadn't done it before, and they're sort of figuring it out on the fly. But this is Formula One. They have teams of people, very smart people that are going to sit there, and they would have analysed all the data from these first 3 races. You know, if you go back, if they went and raced at Albert Park today, it would be a far less exciting race than it was a couple of weeks
That's
ago.
a good point.
Right? This is as good as it's going to get because it's Formula One. Everything is optimized to the point, right? Everything just you all end up at this. I mean, we saw it in the last rules, right? The first couple of races with the high downforce, the ground effects cars, great. But by the end of it, they're all on rails. They're all going absolutely as fast as they can, and they couldn't pass, right? Because they're all like absolutely at the pinnacle, and it's great, but it's also like, well, you can't you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, and they're just gonna get smarter and smarter and smarter, and the races are going to get more and more predictable.
Very good point. That's actually a good point that I don't think anyone's really, but it hasn't. Look, I'm a fan in that there was so much kerfuffle about it. I remember watching the first free practice sessions in Australia, right? And if somehow F1 had kept it all secret and not leaked any of the thing about the new rules, I was like, I don't know if anyone actually noticed the difference really in terms of the way the cars sounded, the time in terms of the cars, how they went. I meant like watching on TV.
Watching on TV, as long as you don't have any onboards.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, the person in the stands.
That's the big thing, is the onboards.
So in that sense, there was a bit of a kerfuffle, but one thing I'm totally with you on. Like, super clipping sucks. It's an awful spectacle.
Yeah.
It must make it extremely hard to drive because you're used to accelerating until your braking point, but now you're driving and you're like, well, now my braking point kind of starts 200 meters before I actually need to start braking because my car is braking, and then I will brake. But anyway, I'm positive because I think the cars as an individual car are a lot more exciting.
Yeah.
They're now grip limited. And I think, as you say, when you go to, even without the adjustments, when we went to, like these things around Monaco are going to be, like, ridiculous. Because they're going to have the full 700 plus kilowatts all the time. But maybe not Monaco, because
Monaco would be interesting. Like, they are, I mean, the one thing I do like about them is they are smaller cars and they have been a bit better to race.
They need to be a lot smaller. They're not that much smaller.
Yeah, they're not that much smaller. They're still big. Like, again, as we've discussed on this podcast, I'm very old. I started watching F1 in the early 1990s. And
540 kgs.
Yeah, they were smaller cars. I mean, this will probably sound crazy to a younger, newer F1 fan, but the Spanish Grand Prix in 1991 was an absolute cracker. Like, they were overtaking backwards and forwards, and with no DRS and no boost and any of that sort of stuff. It was a more exciting race because it was, long straight, big braking zone. I think the problem is F1 is continually trying to, it's probably not ultimately that complicated to make it better, but it just requires some degree of compromise in the sense that make the cars smaller, give them less aerodynamics, right? Just the less downforce you give them, the better. The problem is, obviously, they're going to go slower. But to me, it's like give them less downforce, more power, give them more power.
And I mean, that's where I think I'm positive, isn't it? It's effectively what they've done, really.
Hopefully.
Like, it's just that the cars, I think fundamentally...
They've given them more power sometimes. It's like you just need to give them... If they could, but the problem is I think the batteries are too small now because they're obviously trying to save weight so that you can't... If they could have the full 700 kilowatts all the time, great. Like, that would, to me, would be more interesting, right?
Yeah, and I think they'll and then they'll get there, and B, that's an easy fix. They can easily do that, right? They can up the fuel flow limit slightly. And what they've done, I think, is actually reduce the power of the cars slightly, but...
Which I don't care. And that's the other thing.
Exactly.
I don't care. They can be slow. They can be a bit slow. They're still way faster than the F2 cars. Like,
so that's the weird thing in that... So, pardon for getting too technical, but effectively you could have 350 kilowatts out and a maximum of 250 kilowatts in for the first few races, right? I'm like, well, that's always going to be fail then, because you're always going to use more energy than you're harvesting. So just flip it, which effectively they've kind of done now. Not black and white, but I'm like, just flip it, because the cars can do it. It's just that they weren't in the regulations allowed to do it. So I'm like, well, just allow them to harvest 350 kilowatts and only use 250 kilowatts. So yes, you're going to be about 100 kilowatts down on overall power, but they're still going to be 650 kilowatts. And you're going to have plenty of juice. And that's what they've done with the super clipping now, can feed 350 kilowatts back into the battery.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, because I think fundamentally, I'm in favour, because there's less downforce, the cars are moving around more, they're more entertaining to watch the drivers drive until they hit super clipping. They're wrestling more, they're oversteering. The tyres seem to be working better because there's less downforce and there's less drag.
I have got a bit of an issue with the tyres. Like, Melbourne was a prime example where, I actually think that would have been a far more interesting race if you had a bit more tyre degradation, right? I think Pirelli has sort of got still got like PTSD from 2012 when everyone hammered them for having super high deg. I don't think they should have super, super high degradation, but you shouldn't be able to do, like, if it's just going to be all one-stop races, that's boring.
Well, it could almost be a no-stop race.
You know what I mean? Like, that race in Melbourne, Ferrari, in theory, were, like, trying to play the strategy better, but, like, Mercedes came in and put on a hard tyre with what was about, like in the teens, right? It was like 15 or something. Yeah. And then drove all the way to the end. You shouldn't be able to do that. You shouldn't be able to do that without a performance drop, right? Yeah. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of having these different tyres? Like, they need to go
a step lower on there.
Yeah, they just
need to. You're talking about the learning.
So they should be, the hard tyre should basically degrade to a certain plateau where it's a bit. I mean, far be it from Formula One to look at other sports to learn lessons, but I mean, you look at NASCAR, right? A new tyre is a significant advantage. I remember, the best example is there was a race a few years ago on a road course. Our local hero, Shane Van Gisbergen, was driving there, and he'd come from the back a couple of times and got himself to the front, and there was about 10 laps to go. Caution. Everyone, he stays out. He's like, well, I got track position, I'm going to stay out. Well, everyone behind him's like, well, we can't pass him, so we'll just get new tyres and see if we can do it that way. And sure enough, they come out, they blow by him, right? Because he hasn't got the tyre. And then within 10 laps, it was a pretty short run. Like, within 10 laps, their tyres have degraded to basically the same point his tyres are at, and it comes back to skill again, and he's able to then drive his way back to the front, and that's what it should be. Like, there should be some level of advantage if you can do a one-stop Mercedes if you can make that hard tyre last, but it should be slower than, say, putting on a medium or a soft tyre. Like, there should be some point of difference. Otherwise, they're all going to do as few pit stops as possible, and it's going to be a bit of a dud. Again, they will optimize this. They will just get to the point where they optimize it, and it's going to become a bit more predictable. So they need to, I reserve judgment until we see a few more races, but I
slagged it off. We're
having
back
just
to
slagged
the
it off
again.
Bringing it full circle. But, I don't think these regulations are good, and I do think they probably, I don't think they should, bring back V10s. I think that would be a retrograde step for Formula One to just go to. I do think synthetic fuel is a good alternative for the future, and that's probably a discussion for another day. Like, what should the next regulations for F1 look like? But I do think these rules are amiss, if only because it's classic Formula One. They knew it was coming. 2023. Yeah. Everything Max Verstappen said in 2023 has been pinpoint accurate. How can you, as a sport, know there's a problem? Like I say, they're all smart people. The people running F1, they're all smart. But they just knew it was going to happen. And it's just bizarre that they've allowed it. Like, it's just, like the 2014 or whatever it was with the noses, the ugly noses.
Yeah.
It's like, stop. Like, when you know there's going to be a problem, get the pen out and just scribble it out and rewrite, change the rule. Like, now we're 3 races in and we're starting to change it. You could have made these changes 3 years ago, and we might have been in a better position now because the first 3 races wouldn't have been weird, and then no one would be criticising it because they would have addressed the issue before it became an issue. But they knew it was a problem and they didn't fix it.
Well, all I know is that, having been an occasional viewer, I am now watching every F1 race.
Yeah,
so I enjoy it. But let us know what you think in the comments. I suspect I might be out on a limb on this one, and most comments will agree with Sir Stephen. But let us know. Are there bits you like? Are there bits you don't like? Anything else you want us to discuss on the podcast, let us know. You'll find Steve at Steve Drives Cars. Steve Drives Cars. Only one Steve. Steve Drives Cars. Check his work out on Cars Guide and news.com.au. You'll find me at Addicted to Sliding. And thanks for joining me, Steve.
Mate, always a pleasure chatting cars.
We'll see you next week. Bye for now.